Hey guys, welcome back to Creative Philosophy. In today's video, you will learn the techniques that I use to create this photo manipulation piece. This video is targeted more towards the intermediate audience who have some experience with photo manipulation and Photoshop. So if that is you, let's get started. So as you can see here, we have our background image which we'll be working on top of, and also we have our turtle image which is going to be our subject for today's photo manipulation. I start by adding a layer mask to our subject, which is the turtle, and then using a black brush to kind of paint away the parts that I don't need, such as to emulate the turtle coming out of the water, kind of like the one we did in our previous photo manipulation, which is the Gojira Godzilla photo manipulation. I then added a hue saturation adjustment layer, and this is to emulate this is to color correct the image. As you can see, I have done some color correction, and that is with the colorize option turned on. You will see this will be a common theme throughout the video where we use hue saturation adjustment layers. It will be on colorize, and that's because we want to change the color to look like that of the background. As you can see, we have changed the color to look like the water to kind of create a level of harmony. Next, I added the cloud image, which will be in our background layer, and this is going to be the same thing. We add a layer mask and then use a soft black brush to kind of blend in the cloud with the sea, and then use a hue saturation adjustment layer and to kind of match the colors, and that also you can see it'll be with colorize turned on. Next, I added a lightning image. Now you might ask, why is there a lightning image? Is this for pure aesthetics and whatnot? And yes, it will serve a purpose with the aesthetics of the photo manipulation, but it also serves another important function, and that is it is going to act as our light source. So as you can see with the turtle, on top of the turtle we have a little bit of light, right? And that is the original image, and we can see with the background image as well, we have some light coming from the front, right? And there are shadows cast on the closer to the audience, right? So we can kind of infer that the light source is somewhere on top and in front of the subject. So that's what we're going to play with the lightning strike. Since it is cloudy and we don't have a sun, making the light kind of without a light source and having shadows and highlights, it is going to look a little bit unrealistic. So we are adding an additional light source, which is our lightning strike, to emulate kind of, it is also blue in color, which is a plus. So we can kind of say, okay, because of the lightning source, the lightning, which is the light source, we have these cast shadows on the rocks and highlights on the turtle. Next is time for the shadows and highlights. As beginners, we usually make the mistake of actually painting in the highlights, which is something we should not do. As you can see here, I'm using the exposure adjustment layer, and for the shadows it is set to -20, which is not good. I will change that later on, and I don't know if you can see this on video. So yeah, we put the values on minus if you want to make a shadow, and we put it on positive if you want to make a highlight. Okay, so as you can see, I'm using the layer mask within the adjustment layer to kind of paint in the shadows carefully using a very low opacity brush. And the one advice I can give is not to overdo the shadows and highlights. Okay, it will look really funny if you overdo it everything. As you can see near the turtle fin part, not the fin, what do you call it, the wing, I don't know, near the part is kind of overdone, so I will fix that later on. So yeah, don't overdo shadows and highlights using exposure adjustment. Next, I added in the ripple image, water ripple image, and this is to emulate when a body is thrown into water. When it comes out, there's kind of a wave that kind of follows, I don't know what you call that in physics. Okay, so that I was trying to emulate this. As you can see, this image is the only image that is not transparent in this whole photo manipulation, and there's a reason for that. The most of the assets that I used were from a previous project. I just exported them as a PNG, so they're all transparent. This one I downloaded just for this project, so we have to play with it. So it's the same for this ripple as well. Add it to a group and add a layer mask and paint away using black brush, and also add a hue saturation adjustment layer. Here you can see me using the quick selection tool to kind of select the man in the front, and then painting black over the layer mask of the ripple image. This is kind of to create depth without being a professional. Next, I proceeded to add shadows and highlights to our original image, which is our background image with the person standing on the rock. This was kind of the hardest part of this process, not only because there were no individual layers. Like usually I do individual layers as rocks. You can cut it and paste it, but that is going to be a lot harder. So yeah, I just use the quick selection tool every time to select each rock and then paint the exposure over it. As you guys can see, I'm keeping the exposure really low and not overdoing it, because it'll kind of look comical if you overdo it and kind of take away from the look you're trying to go sometimes. If it's your style, you can totally do it, but I recommend you keep it kind of low. And the further away you go from the light source, you have to dim the exposure, the highlights. So you have to reduce the opacity in your brush and kind of play around with that value. Next, I did the same thing for the shadows as well. I just copied the exposure and put in a minus value, and then inverted the layer mask using Ctrl+I, and then I just brushed all over the shadows. This was kind of easier because the whole part was already black, so it was just kind of adding more. I could have added a curves adjustment layer, but yeah, I just went with the exposure adjustment. Next, for the man himself, I kind of pressed W on my keyboard and selected the subject, and I selected him using the select subject tool, as you saw, and then painted over him with the white brush in both the exposure and the shadows. This part is kind of a mistake, I would say, rather. So the cast shadows of the turtle, as you can see I'm painting with a flat brush, is not supposed to be there. Okay, so cast shadows cannot be cast on deep water, it seems. I did not know this when I was making this tutorial or recording the video. So as you can see, you can't cast a shadow over deep water, says an old law of landscape painting. I did really not know this, and so apparently you cannot cast shadow on deep water. So I did not remove it later on. I just kept it as it is because it was appealing to the eye. So if you're doing a photo manipulation on water, do not add shadows, cast shadows, okay? You could add shadows on the subject itself, on the body, with highlights and a darker part of the body and a lighter part of the body, like we did with the exposure layers on our turtle himself. But you cannot cast that shadow on the water. If it is a shallow water, you could cast it, but it will be blurry and soft and transparent, I would say, very low opacity. So keep that in mind. So with that done, the next thing I did was add some clouds to the scene, and the clouds are from different brushes I downloaded, and you can get the brushes for free as well. You don't have to necessarily pay for brushes. Alternatively, you can also use transparent images, but I think that is kind of really bothersome because you have to kind of tilt the image, and plus it's a PNG. If you resize it, it'll get pixelated, whatever. So I recommend you use a cloud brush for your photo manipulations. So as you can see here, I'm kind of trying to emulate the foggy presence of the scene. So I'm kind of adding different clouds and whatnot, and it also has a different purpose, and that is to hide the contact point between the turtle and the water. So next I added a water droplet transparent image. I got it from Google. So I added a layer mask to it with the selection of our turtle. So you can just control click your turtle and add a layer mask to it. What this does, it'll just limit the region of the water droplet to just your turtle, so it would not go outside of your turtle. So I did this, and using a black brush I kind of painted away the unnecessary parts and also reduced the opacity to make it look more realistic. Now as you can see, I was adding a highlight to the turtle by creating a layer beneath our turtle layer, or turtle group rather, and then painting over it with a light blue color sample from the background. And the original idea for this was to kind of replicate the rain effect. Like when you see an image and when rain falls on the body, it kind of creates an outer glow. You usually see that in animes and stuff. So I was trying to replicate that. Then I realized, oh wait, we don't have rain, and if I had to add rain, we have to like draw droplets in every part of the water, and also this guy standing on the rock. So I thought that was bothersome, so I did not do that. Instead I went for a more godly appearance, like a holy look, kind of a more mystical appearance for the turtle, and I think it turned out pretty well. And I also changed the blend modes to screen. So here is the part where we correct the brightness levels of the turtle to match with the background. So now as you can see, I just added a black and white adjustment layer on top of all the layers, and this is to kind of, as I said before, we will be coming in more depth to correct the brightness levels of our subject. And you can instantly notice that the underside of our turtle is way more darker than the darkest side of our background image and the clouds. So we have to correct that by using a levels adjustment or a curves adjustment layer. As you can see, I added a curves adjustment layer, and then what I did is bring down the lightness and bring up the darkness, I mean shadows. Bringing up the shadows does not mean it's going to be darker, it's going to be lighter, okay? It works that way. Next, what I did is kind of take a snapshot of the project by pressing Ctrl plus Alt plus Shift plus E, which will create a snapshot of all the layers together as one. And then I converted it into a smart object, and then went to the camera raw filter to add some adjustments like exposure, contrast, and grain, which we all love. We love grain on this channel because it helps to kind of bond everything together and also have that artistic feel of old filmy stuff. Yeah, something like that. I also added a vignette, as you saw, and then I proceeded to the presets menu and tried different presets. In this tutorial, as you see in this video, I added a vivid preset, but later on in the original piece it will be a different piece. I mean, it will be a different preset. So yeah, just letting you know. So that's pretty much it for this photo manipulation tutorial. If you guys enjoyed this video or found something valuable from it, make sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more content related to this, consider subscribing. With that being said, I will see you in the next one.